Are you still close enough to your trauma that when you think about the holidays, at best, you don't get excited about it or look forward to them, and you kind of don't feel good? And at worst, maybe thinking about the holidays brings on a full-blown panic attack. Or maybe you're somewhere in between. Let's talk about how we can think differently about the holidays so that it's not something that causes even more trauma. Hi, I'm Stephanie, and I help women who love Jesus to find healing and freedom after the trauma of abuse or betrayal. If that's you, I hope you'll join me. Let's get started. One of the first things that I think is important when we're talking about making a shift that we don't talk about a lot in Christian circles in the West, I'm not sure if they talk about them in very many places, but that's the idea of who is our source. And I have found, and you'll hear me talk about this a lot as we move along and cover different topics, that as I'm connected to Jesus and as I'm curious with him and as I receive his invitation to be on an adventure with him versus feeling like he's sending me out on a mission that I can't fail on. I mean, like that I could fail on, but I have to get right. Like it's all about getting it right. When it's enjoying the adventure with him versus getting it all right by myself, it makes such a huge difference. The most important thing that we can do, well, the two most important things, because one is kind of a prerequisite to the other, is first we need to be connected to ourselves. So we can't be hanging out in fight or flight trauma mode. We need to be connected to ourselves and grounded. We need to be out of the bottom part of our brain, that where we're just surviving. And we need to be up in the connecting part of our brain. And we'll talk about that in future videos. The ways that we can do that are get outside and go for a walk, movement, exercise, deep breaths, eating nutritious food, staying hydrated, getting time in the sunshine. Those kinds of things all help our body to heal and get out of survival mode. The deep breaths will indicate, when we take a deep breath, it tells our body, I'm safe enough to breathe. I'm not going to be dead soon, so you can calm down. And that's what we need to be we need to be out of that mode to be able to connect. It's really important that we make him our source, that when we're our source, everything is performative and we have to make it work. When we're connected to him as our source and he is moving through us, it's such a different dynamic. And it's one of those things that you kind of have to experience to know, and then as you experience it, you want more of it. And I'd be willing to bet that if you're watching this, you have probably experienced that at another time in your life when you weren't in the middle of trauma. And maybe you were cajoled or poo-pooed or mocked or ridiculed for expressing that experience or sense. But that's the place that God wants us to live from, with him. And you can get that back. And if you haven't experienced it, you can find it for the first time. Once we have connected to ourselves and made God our source, invited him in, gotten curious with him, ask him what he wants us to see or know, or what he wants us to hear from him, and begun to kind of just steep ourselves in that and feel the love and the delight and that he has for us, then we want to make a plan. When we're making a plan, here are some of the things that we want to keep in mind. We need to take responsibility for our own safety and well-being and our own wants and needs and desires. We can't just hope for the best, because honestly, how has that worked out in the past? Another thing about the holidays is to expect grief and even exhaustion. The holidays just have a way of kind of magnifying all the senses, whether it's joy and happiness and excitement and magicalness and all of those things, or whether it's sadness and grief or loneliness or anger. And we just need to be prepared for that. So we need to make time to process those feelings. If we fill up our calendar and we have no margin, then we won't be able to do that, and we will just wear ourselves out. The next thing is to consider how you're wired. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Do you need to be around people? Maybe you like to go out and actually shop and enjoy the lights and the music and the hustle and bustle and all of the people bumping into each other on Christmas Eve. Maybe that feeds your soul, and it wouldn't be Christmas without that. Then make sure that gets on the calendar, because that feeds your soul. Figure out a way that you can do that, whether it happens to be on Christmas Eve or not, or you make arrangements to do the town square or the Christmas tree, community Christmas tree lighting or whatever. Plan for that. On the other hand, if you're an introvert like me, you need to think about what feeds your soul. Maybe it's small gatherings with friends, inviting a couple of friends over to watch a movie or have a meal, or spending time reading a book or watching a movie by yourself. So maybe you have heard the story about the rocks in the jar, the big rocks. There was a university professor, a time management guru, who came in to speak to a bunch of students, and he brought in a big gallon jar, and he was talking to them about making the most of their time. And he had a pile of big rocks, and some medium-sized rocks, and some little rocks and pebbles, and some sand and some water, all in containers on the table. And as he put the small things in first and then added the bigger rocks, there wasn't room for the big rocks. But when he pulled up a second jar and he moved everything over and he put the big rocks into the jar first, then he added the medium rocks and the smaller rocks and the pebbles and the sand and the water. He was able to get everything into the jar with room left over for the water. And the moral of the story was not, if you plan it right, there's room for everything. The moral of the story is, put in the most important things first. So those things that we just talked about, considering your needs, considering how you're wired, and making time for grief and feelings and healing time, those are your big rocks. They need to go in first. And then as you're planning, maybe you have children that you only have a selected amount of time during the holidays. Maybe you're planning some things with them that you know that they want to do. You sit down and come up with a list of them, then plug those things in. If there's not enough time, it's okay to say no to something. This is a big transition time in your life, and that's a good time to make some adjustments about what traditions are important to you. Or maybe you have traditions for this time, and down the road as you heal and you don't need as much removed time, and you have connections with people who are safe that you can do things with, maybe add some of those things back in down the road. And know that not everything that you're letting go of or giving up is for forever. Then after the holidays, take time to reflect. What worked? What didn't work? What do you want to do again? What do you not want to do again? What would you add that you didn't do? Those kind of things. And make notes for the coming year that you can look back on next year. So I'm curious, what was helpful for you? What would you add? What would you take away? Let me know in the comments, and I hope that you'll join me by subscribing to the channel and following along. I would love to be able to welcome you in the comments if you say hello. I also understand if you're not quite ready to be in a semi-public place yet. I hope to have more opportunities for a private place. Thank you for joining me, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. All right, so we're talking here about surviving the holidays after abuse and what that's like, and the things that we can do to think about that. The most important things are connecting with ourselves and connecting with God and making a plan. And in the beginning years of healing, the grief and the sadness they're gonna weigh heavier than some of the joy and the delight. And over time that will shift, but they're not the same. And so, I'm rambling, but that's okay. We're gonna get there. All right, so I'm rambling again. That was a big truck that just stirred up a whole lot of dust on my dirt road that hasn't been rained on in a while.